Well, as I said earlier in the show, breaking this afternoon, the National Environmental Standard for Freshwater has been announced by the Ministry for the Environment. And joining us now to unpack what does that mean initially as they go through the detail is Chris Allen, National Spokesman for Freshwater for Federated Farmers. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Chris.
Good evening, Sarah.
Now, okay, could you break down for our viewers and audience? We have had the National Policy Statement out there as a bit of an overarching guide for regional councils. What does the National Environmental Standard for Freshwater mean for individual farmers? And what have you uncovered so far as you've started to go through the documents?
Right, Sarah, what I'll do is I'll go back just one step. There has been a National Policy Statement for freshwater. It's been out for about 11 odd years, and then it's revised in 2017. So that's what's driving council for setting water quality limits. And in amongst that, there's some national bottom lines. What this government is doing as of today is they're revising that national policy statement. So there's new national bottom lines, and that some of those bottom lines is whether it be E. coli, it could be sediment, or it could be nitrogen or nitrate. Some of those limits are being revised down, so more stringent. So when you've got a national bottom line, you cannot go below that. You have to have a program in place of how you're restoring the water quality. So there's a whole package there. Te Mana Otawai, it's the health of the river, is being elevated from attributes, and amongst that that you consider when setting water quality limits is going to the highest. So everything has to give effect to Te Mana Otawai. Then we've got a national environmental standards, and amongst that we've probably heard about the intensive winter grazing. So there's a whole package around that. There's freshwater environment plans that farmers will have to have, and some of that stuff hasn't been fully developed yet, but we will have to have those. What's going on in winter grazing, how much pugging you can have in a paddock, what percentage of a paddock can be pugged, or over what slope. That's stuff that will affect farmers who have winter grazing. If you want to do any land use intensification, go towards dairy grazing or go towards the dairy converting to dairy. There's some limits coming in there, like you won't be able to increase or convert to dairy as of September this year. And then there's the stock exclusion regulations, which are called 360 regs. So they will apply directly to your land. Councils won't have to do a plan change or anything, but you'll have stock exclusion regs. And the most stringent rules that are in place, whether your local council's already got them or the 360 regs, will apply. And there's going to be some real unintended consequences of what we see at the moment and amongst those.
So when you say stringent, it's just working through the detail, the Federated Farmers team this evening, Chris, and just being able to revise your advice and putting forward what this really means. I mean, we're going into an election. I'm used to seeing a lot of press releases, Chris, with the words welcomes. And I believe that our industry bodies, of course, want to be on the right side of a red, and if not a red-green government into September. Federated Farmers going to ensure that their members understand how this flow-on effect affects them.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of detail, and there's one thing I can say amongst this package. There's a huge amount of detail for farmers. There's a lot for our entire communities. This affects urban as well, and it's going to affect it in a big way. But when it comes to farming, thinking, these rules don't affect me, they do affect us, because everything that we do, whether we're regenerative, whether we're organic, whether we're very intensive, does have an effect on water quality, and that will come back to the way the permitted rules will apply. Some of the detail, it's going to be very hard to comply. Just looking at an example of a high country farm, low slope land, but it's really extensive. It could cost them hundreds of thousands to do stock exclusion, just because the sheer number of rivers that all intersect on these properties. That is the sort of detail we're going to, and it might be the vision of the government and us all that it's more around the intensive. It's going to be the extensive farming that are going to be caught up in those stock exclusion weeks. The winter grazing, there's already been a whole lot of work going on about good management practices. This is codifying it, it's putting it in regulations. You will do X and Y, and that will come with having to have a resource consent, having to have a freshwater farm plan. So there's a whole suite of things coming. So we're just got to work our way through it, navigate what we can do, because the lawyers will make a lot of money out of this whole process, and we don't, as farmers, don't want to part with our hard-earned cash, so we've got to find the most efficient way of dealing with it. But these rules are there. It's all signed off by government, and it's pretty much the 3rd of September. It's all go.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us to add that very vital and important part onto Sarah's Country this evening. Chris Allen, National Spokesman for Freshwater for Federated Farmers.
This is Sarah's Country.